Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Greet the Week. I am Jan Moray and have here with my co-host Mona Duncan, and we have several other guests joining us this morning or this afternoon. So I'm very excited to see everybody, and thank you for joining, and thank you for those who watch us on the replay. Today's topic is profound principles, and Mona is the one who came up with that topic. So Mona, why don't you take it away?
Okay, well, I will do. You know, most of you that have talked with me anytime, you know how much I love words, and that every word has power. It has power in how we use it, it has power in how it was coined, and it has power in how we denigrate it, how we misuse it. But anyway, I was looking at profound, and a couple of the definitions of profound is inquiring deep thought, and it's looking for like a subtle truth, that it's in there somewhere. So I got to thinking of some things and just some principles in life, and then looking profound what? Profound principles. But a principle can be like a general rule, kind of a standard or a norm, kind of a common sense thing. Like Dr. Glasser says that it's that what he teaches with choice theory and what we're teaching with choice theory is the fact that it's not common sense. If it was common sense, everybody would be doing it. But because they're not doing it, it's not common. Well, it's kind of like one of those profound principles. A principle can be general, but then it can also be individual, which comes across as to what we believe, what our attitudes are, what our standards are. So I thought I'd just talk today about a few things that the more I give thought to it, the deeper they become. And one is just the plain, simple, I love you. You know, how often do we say I love you or don't say it?
Yeah.
Because it's too profound to say, or if it, you know, we just maybe use it casually. And we had a friend call the other day that his mom it's not with the coronavirus, but his mom is on the verge of deceasing, dying, and he called and he was real broken up, and he's not allowed to be with her because of the coronavirus. In fact, they had an armed guard walking in with him when he took her in to get her settled in and so forth. But anyway, I was talking and we had it on speakerphone. He was talking. He and my husband are best friends, had been since second grade, and anyway, as well, they were just talking, they were getting ready to hang up, and I just said out loud, I said, I love you, Paul.
Yeah.
And you know that it was just like, well, it was real powerful to me. I mean, you know, I've known this guy for as long as we've been married, and he came before me in Lawrence life. And you know, he's just a really, really neat guy. But just to say, I love you. And I remember the first time my brother-in-law told me he loved me, and it just, you know, shocked me.
Right.
That I mean, he's a Texan, okay?
Yeah.
And he's the gun toting and fishing and all this kind of stuff. He's ye old Texan and very, very few words. And that one day as he's getting ready to leave, he says, well, I love you. And I mean, you know, it just kind of floored me. Who is this madman, or who is this guy speaking to me? But just the fact that we use the word love and say that we love, it's really kind of deep and profound. But then some principles that I pretty much live my life by, or certainly try to, is one is to believe in your dreams so they can come true. I have this little, I don't know if you can see it or not, it's kind of pretty. I've written on the top, so it's hard for you to see what I'm trying to say, but back underneath it is a blue form, and it's written under there. It says, and it's in real pretty calligraphy and in different styles and going up and down and sideways, and it says, believe in the direction of your dreams. And I've had that on my desk and used it because I liked it a lot for years. And probably a year ago, it dawned on me that just following this dream, I mean, there has to be more than that. It kind of goes back to the action with choice theory, you know. But I went ahead and I just wrote on it, on the top of it. And it's what I wrote is, believe in your dreams so they can come true. If we don't believe, it's not going to work.
Right.
And so, you know, believing. So have faith. looking forward to something that hadn't happened yet. And so I think the trifecta of having faith is a desire or a want. What is it you want? What is it you desire? What is it that do you believe you can receive it? Do you believe you can attain it? Do you believe you can learn about it? And then expectancy. Are you looking for it everywhere you look? Do you think that this is a little hint that it's on the way? Because that's the trifecta of faith. To believe, to want, to believe, and to expect it.
Yeah.
And as you look at something, and even if it turns out to not be so great, maybe there was a little inkling in there that's going to help lead to that dream or to that fulfillment.
Yeah, what's coming to my mind is with this coronavirus that we're going through right now, and there's so much fear out there, and people, and it's like their thoughts are being consumed with all this fear, and my thought is, well, I don't want to get caught up in that negative emotion. I want to believe that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this okay, and we're going to find another normal. And I'm saying I don't want to think about all the negative stuff that you're bringing up and you're talking about, because I don't want to go there. That brings me down. I want to think of the hope, and we talked about hope last time. I have hope that we're going to get through this, and it's going to work out. Everything's going to be fine. We're going to struggle a little bit, and there's going to be some complications, and some people are going to get hurt a lot worse than others. But we're resilient. That's why man has survived as long as we have as a species, is because we are able to adapt and to change and to move forward. So I believe in what you're saying, just 100%.
Right. And even when things aren't so good, which I think is point number 6, or one that I had that I thought we'd maybe talk about a little bit today, is don't waste today on yesterday.
Yeah.
Or if you go with that fear, and it's not to discount it, it's a legitimate fear, but when we go with the fear, we are forgetting, it's failure to look at what abilities we do have.
Right.
The things that we have overcome, that we can overcome, and how creative we are, and the fact that it may not look like it'll work today, but tomorrow, good night's sleep, or even if it's not a good night's sleep, just a little bit of sleep, tomorrow you're going to see things a little bit differently. And tomorrow may be, again, not the completed plan, but you just keep on keeping on. And you don't give up. You don't let that fear come in and bog you down.
Right. Don't get consumed by it and say, there's nothing I could do. It's like there's always something you can do. And again, we talked about baby steps last week. Even no matter how little it is, there's always something that you can do.
Right. And of course, that little acronym that people have used before, that fear is false evidence appearing real. Well, sometimes that evidence is really real.
Yeah.
And there is something to be fearful of or to be cautious of.
Right.
And again, back with words, instead of looking at fear, it is looking at the fact of maybe being more cautious instead of reckless abandonment. I was talking with someone the other day, and they were talking about someone that was so selfish. And I said, well, could you use some other word that's a little less condemning? And if you can use a little word that's a little less, like maybe even self-absorbed, maybe that's the same thing, or not conscious of what their actions are. The result of their actions is the result of their attitudes. Maybe just not seeing it that way, or that they're just looking at it from a more personal point of view. And if we can see them in a different light, they may change or they may not, but at least we won't be so anxious or judgmental. That's the word, exactly. Yeah. And so kind of following along with the believe in your dreams so they can come true. That's what it says on my little thing. Believe in so they can come true. Because if you don't have them kind of written down, which goes to another principle, is that if it's not written down, it really doesn't exist.
Right. Yes.
If
you don't write it down, it didn't happen. Exactly.
It didn't. And in working with the prisoners, they would always come with complaints. That's why we would write it out and we'll send it into the powers to be. And it's amazing. I don't think I've only helped them write down. In my 20 years of being there, I can only remember offhand 2 people that I've helped them write out a legitimate complaint.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
So,
sometimes all they want is for someone to listen to them.
well, true. And I, did that 100% of the time.
Right. I'm sure you did.
But if it isn't written down, and so it's making a plan, there's something about our mind that it doesn't work well on fuzzy pictures. It doesn't work well on I don't knows. It doesn't work well on maybe so. It doesn't work well on indecisions. And so if you're going to plan a trip, regardless of what the trip is, whether it is to go to the mailbox or whether it's to go get some groceries, what are you going to wear? You're going to go out there and pick up your mail in your pajamas? Are you going to change your clothes before you walk out and see the neighbors walking by? So we need to have a plan of some kind. And there was a Harvard thing that came out that said that out of all of the graduates, only 3% had really concrete written plans for their life and kind of the steps.
Oh, I think I've seen that before. Yes.
In order to get there. Only 3%.
Yeah.
And yet that 3% in following their careers for several years, that 3% accomplished 97% more than the others.
Yeah.
So it's having not just a fuzzy picture, go on back down and believe in your dreams and know what they are so they can come true. And you have to believe in them. Didn't happen today, that doesn't mean it won't happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
never give up, like you were saying before too, because if it doesn't happen today, it may happen tomorrow.
Exactly. Never give up, never give up, never give up. As long as there's breath in the body, there's always a chance that something. And it kind of goes hand in hand with all this, was looking at the fact that years are comprised of minutes. Years are comprised of minutes. And yet how many minutes we waste that really, well, they're just meaningful. Mm-hmm. And to realize, what do we do with our time? How do we use it? Time is one of those things that is, well, you can use it or not. You can use it effectively or not use it effectively, and it just keeps going on.
Right. It doesn't wait for you.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't tell you, you just wasted the last half hour.
Yeah. So it's one of the questions that I ask myself when I begin to realize that is, can you give it 15 minutes? And there's something about that once we take an action and begin to get into it, even if it's just writing down a few thoughts, that begins to build on it. And you have more thoughts to write down, or you have more energy. It's like an object in motion keeps going, and an object that's not in motion takes a lot of energy to get it to get in motion.
There's something that I've done a lot, and I found out there's an actual name for it. It's called temptation bundling. And it's when you have things that you want to do, but you just never get around to doing it. Because there's all these other things that you really want, or the things that you feel you should do. Because there's so many other things that you want to do. And so it's like, okay, I want to watch this movie, but before I watch the movie, I'm going to do this thing that I should do. And so you're kind of like rewarding yourself to do it. So you bundle it together. What I used to do, I've always tried to exercise, and I was trying to ride an exercise bike on a regular basis, but I really hate the exercise bikes. It's so boring to me. But there was this book that I was reading that I really liked. So it was like, okay, the only time I'm going to read this book is when I'm riding my exercise bike. And so then I bundled those two together. And so if you could look at those things that you really don't want to do, but you feel like you should do, pair them up with something that you really enjoy so that you do get things done. And even if it's just a little bit every day, you're a little much farther than you were the day before.
Right. So it's rewarding yourself.
Yeah.
But it's doing the thing that is not as rewarding so that you can get the reward.
That's right.
It's not rewarding yourself first and then saying, oh, well, reminds me of my daughter one time. Whenever I would pick her up from school, we had errands to work. I homeschooled her. She went to school the first 2 years for school. Anyway, I'd pick her up and we'd go run errands and stuff. We'd stop at HEB or 7-Eleven to get a soda pop or to get a big gulp. And one day I pulled up, and boy, I mean, she hopped out of that car and went running in there and got a drink for both of us. And I was sitting outside in front of I could see her, talking, and she had her big gulps and she had them sitting on the desk. And the guy said something to her, and all of a sudden she went like that because she didn't have any money. And I knew she didn't, but I figured she knew where to come to get it, So she walked back out the door, and she had this look on her face like I could have had a V8. And so I was sitting there in the car, and I had $2. And she came over and she picked it up and she said, they won't give it to me just because I'm cute. And it's the same thing with it. We may want these rewards and we may go ahead and get them, but what we're really wanting and what is really essence, what is really needed is not going to go away. So we need to put in the sweat before we put in the reward.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so what else do you have on your list?
Well, I was just looking here to see what I have. Can you give it 15 minutes? We talked about that. And life is not fair, but make the most of it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to accept. Life isn't fair. And if you're going around trying to make it fair or trying to guilt people into doing something to make it fair, it's just, you're not going to get very far. Maybe you'll succeed sometime, but life just isn't fair. And it's just to learn how to deal with that.
Only maybe it's more fair than we want to give it credit for.
Well, we're looking in the wrong places, huh?
Right. Back to, the fact that a profound comment or a profound principle is the fact that it has such subtleties to it. And the more I really think about that, I think life is fair.
Yeah.
I think it is fair. It is fair. And I don't know, I've used this illustration before, but I find it so powerful. It was a movie that I watched, and it was a reckless guy had killed 2 teenagers, brutally murdered them. They were out parking, and he killed them, murdered them. And anyway, later he was on death row. And, we the people had decided that was his fate, the murderer's fate. But the mother of the daughter that was killed was just so angry with life and so just, and anyway, the husband had chosen, his sorrow was not abated in the least, but he had chosen to forgive the guy. Mm. He had chosen to go on and live life even with his sorrow in spite of, And he kept encouraging his wife. He said, just go talk to him. Just go for yourself, not for him, just for you. And she kept wanting these answers. Why did you do it? Why did you do it? Why did you do it? And so finally she goes in and she's sitting there on one side of the window and he's on the other side. And they're looking at each other and she says, why? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you kill my daughter? And he looked at her right eyeball to eyeball. And he said, ma'am, all I know is that I was so angry, I had to kill someone. Mm. But you understand that, don't you? Mm. You see, she was so angry.
Yeah.
She was so angry. And maybe life is more fair than we want to acknowledge it to be.
That is definitely a different way to look at it. Yeah.
And that it is telling us something that we have just not been able to see. Yeah. And maybe we have been able to see it, but we're not willing to look at it. And so it's getting honest with ourselves, and that may be the most difficult person to get honest with.
Right. Right.
Because self is always coming in there with the yeah but.
Well, I like the topic of principles, because I read the book by Stephen Covey, Principle Centered Leadership, where he talked about having values and principles that you live your life by. And when you have those principles, it's easier to make decisions, because you think about it, and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and it's like, okay, which one is consistent with my principles, with my values? And if it's consistent with your values, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. But if this other thing that I'm trying to decide whether to do or not, if it's not consistent with my values, no, I'm not going to go there. And
Right. Well, my company, consulting, speaking, training, so forth, is called Solution Principles.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose that because, sometimes people say, well, rules are made to be broken. Well, not necessarily, but a principle can stretch to cover all of those broken rules.
Yes. Yeah.
A principle can spread. It's malleable. And I really believe, back to sitting it down and talking it out, and putting emotions aside to look at reality as much as we can, because I don't know that we don't have that, we don't know what real is, so we can't see reality. But as we can really talk it through, I so firmly believe that there is a solution for every problem, for every situation. And it's one that is for the good of the whole, even though it doesn't mean it's equal.
And it may not be pleasant at the beginning.
Right. And it may be going ahead and getting the needle or the shot or the whatever, because we, the people, have spoken to say, I know when I worked with the prisoners, and on the lesson on authority, and I always called it the unjust system. Because I didn't want to start off anything with an argument. So tonight we're going to talk about the unjust system. And in some ways it is unjust, but maybe it's because we, the people, are unjust.
Is it possible that sometimes principles can be taken too far?
Well, not if it's a legitimate principle.
Well, yeah, I'm not objecting to principles. Of course, they're wonderful. But sometimes, in a practical, real-world sense, a principle can be taken too far and doesn't work.
Well, I don't know that it doesn't work. The consequences may not be pleasant. And so that's the thing for standing up to your principles, is you have to be willing to deal with the consequences that may result, because sometimes a principle that you have is not very well accepted. And
well, maybe in some contexts it's not practical.
Well, I like to go back and look at the golden rule, and the golden rule is treat others the way you would like to be treated. And it's pretty straightforward. And if you're arguing with someone else, but you would like to not be argued with, then obviously we're breaking our own golden rule. But I've also heard, people say, well, forget the golden rule. Let's go to the platinum rule, which is to treat you the way you want to be treated. And I go back to, again, Dr. Glasser. I mean, he's just so plain and simple and deep. And the fact that he talked about happiness or friendship is better than love. You kind of have to love somebody to be their friend. Maybe, matter of fact, you may love them more being a friend than a mate or whatever, But sometimes, he's saying that if we treated everybody like a friend, there'd be no problem. We'd all be doing the golden rule. And why do we treat a friend? Why are we willing to back down with a friend? Because we don't want to lose them. If we treated our friends the way we treat some other people that's very close to us that we love very much, they may be less friendly with us.
Right. Yeah.
And so sometimes we say that these things have gone too far, that rules are made to be broken. Well, not necessarily. You know, maybe you're not looking at it correctly.
Taking Jerry's query, though, when somebody is very firm in their principle, that can lead into the 7 disconnecting habits. And one of the things principles can very much be aligned to values and fulcrums for people, and that's their line in the sand, and they justify those, and the components that moves into then external control. I just think is an interesting and relevant consideration. I don't know if that's what you were meaning, Jerry, but I think we're seeing one with faith-based with churches, the right for churches to open up. I guess the governor in the state of Iowa has allowed religious groups to meet and said that's fine, but anyone else you have to stay with groups of 10. I think she's gotten pressure. I think there's some constitutional issues. That's not the only principle, but I think it's an interesting concept. Principles are wonderful foundations for us, but when they're used in a controlling way, I think that is an interesting topic.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, it definitely is. And the fact that there's good in everything and there's evil in everything, and depends on kind of how we use it and how we, it's looking at the fact that the snake bite is healed with the venom of the snake.
Right.
And I'll just add one more comment. When they are espoused and held so tightly by individuals that are given a role of leadership, now we're all leaders, but in a hierarchical structure, when that individual is given a role of leadership and or authority over others, and we are in a different age where principles / values have always been important to people, but we're in an increasing age where if it's my opinion, it's my opinion and it's right. I think social networking and some of that has exacerbated. Of course, economic inequities exacerbate power and employment. So anyway, I think it's just and when people feel like they don't have power and they don't have a say, how do you and you have to support yourself, or how do you begin to feel like you do have some control over your life when somebody is lauding some principles over you that feel like they suppress your right to be able to have your say and freedom?
Exactly. And all of that it does go back to life certainly does not seem fair. And realizing that there are things we have absolutely no control over. And another person is one of them. And if that person has been given an authority by we the people, then they have more say than our say against them. And it can lead to all kinds of problems, and it can lead to all kinds of hate and disregard and things within us. And if we want to take some control, we need to take control over our own attitudes, our own thoughts, our own principles, our own is spewing out, helping anything, or maybe speaking in a kind voice, even though it doesn't bring a resolve right here right now. It's like one of those little things that begins to grow. And it's always better to respond in kindness and in the 7 connecting habits, regardless of who it is we're connecting with, or who it is we're thinking about, or who it is we are disagreeing with, whether that be, the big powers, the little powers, the kid next door.
And to think about the things that we're choosing to do and to make sure that we're not hurting somebody else. Because that was another thing that Dr. Glasser said is, you know, we don't try to help ourselves to feel better by inflicting pain or something negative onto somebody else.
And that sometimes people do need to be fired or out of office or whatever, but it needs to go through a civil channel.
Yeah.
Not the disconnecting habits. Go through the ones that could bring some more of a pleasant result. So we'll leave that for the end of our day. Thank all of you for being here, and appreciate your coming in for Greet the Week.
Right. Appreciate everyone's comments too. And I will stay on for a little bit if you do want to discuss a little bit more. But for right now, we will close the discussion, and we hope to see everybody again next week for another edition of Greet the Week. Bye-bye.